How you doing? Tony Loretti here with my good friend J.R. Tolver, the great San Diego State wide receiver. Just here to catch up with J.R., talk a little bit of Aztec football, maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing these days. You've got some exciting things going on. But I, being an Aztec myself, graduating way back in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
You graduated when?
Late 90s. No, early 2000s. Yeah, 2002.
Right. And I know you went to high school here at Mira Mesa High School,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you ended up going to San Diego State and playing wide receiver.
Yep.
Tell me about at Mira Mesa. You weren't a receiver. You were,
No, I was a quarterback. Yeah. So it was interesting. You know, my dad was a quarterback, and growing up, I was a running back. I idolized Barry Sanders and Walter Payton. And then when we moved from Louisiana to San Diego in 1992, the Pop Warner team that I was playing for had a need for a quarterback. And so that was the first time I had ever played quarterback, fell in love with the position, and played quarterback all throughout high school. But it was really at the time when the option was very popular.
Right.
So if you were an athletic quarterback, you either switched and you played receiver or defensive back, or you went to the military academies and you ran the option. So I didn't want to run the option.
Gotcha.
And I had some background on San Diego State, just watching Oz Hakeem and Will Blackwell and, you know, them light up the skies as far as throwing the ball is concerned. So when they offered me as a receiver, I really, jumped on the opportunity, being a local kid who had familiarity with San Diego State, and now had an opportunity to play a position that was very valued in that program.
It's interesting, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it reminds me of the young Justice boy, J.R.
Yeah.
Justice.
Yeah.
Quarterback, very good athlete, but he was brought on as a receiver.
Yep.
So, but going back to you played at San Diego State for 4 or 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm. 5 years.
And wide receiver, and I know you accumulated a record or two there, right?
Yeah, or 2 or 3. Yeah.
And what were they?
So, I'm all-time leading receiver in catches and yards, and me and Kasim Osgood, our senior season, had the best season in NCAA history. We broke the most catches and most yards for a duo on the same team, which was really cool to do. So yeah, San Diego State was a great experience for me, great coaches, and some of my best friends in the entire world still come from that place.
Did you have the same coach at San Diego State for all 5 years?
I did not. So Coach Ted Tollner was my coach, and he's the one who recruited me. He and his staff, his agent, or his son, Bruce Tollner, was actually my agent when I went to the NFL. But Coach Tollner was my coach for 4 years. Unfortunately, got fired going into my 5th year. But fortunately, they hired Tom Kraft, who was just a passing genius. And my senior season, I had almost as many catches in my senior year as I did my junior, sophomore, and freshman year. So it worked out for me.
No, that sounds great. And then from there, you had a little. Not a little, but you spent some time in the NFL.
Yep.
So what happened there? You were drafted by
drafted by the Dolphins.
This team.
Yeah,
here.
that team there in 2003.
Right.
5th round. Yeah.
Nice. And tell us about that experience. How did that go? And I know you may have had a knee issue or something.
Yeah, I mean, it was a phenomenal experience. I get goosebumps even thinking about it because I played football since I was 9 years old, and the goal was always to play in the National Football League. I still remember where I was when I got the phone call.
I was going to ask you that.
In my mom's garage, listening to Alicia Keys, thinking I should have been drafted in the 3rd or the 4th, and the 5th was coming, and I was like, well, shoot, am I going to get drafted at all?
Right.
And so very surreal experience, getting drafted by the Dolphins, and then being on the same team as the late, great Junior Seau.
Right.
Seeing some of the guys that I've been watching on TV for so long, sharing the locker room with them. Phenomenal experience.
Yeah, the Dolphins, great history, the Don Shula era and so forth.
Absolutely.
And so you played there a little bit, and then I think you moved on and you played a little bit in Dallas,
Yep.
or you had some experience there, and then now you're out of football,
Yep.
obviously, and I know you're doing some other stuff. But before we get into what you're doing now, I wanted to talk about San Diego State because I know you're still heavily involved.
Absolutely.
And what I really liked about you, and I've known you for about 10 years, you love giving back to San Diego State. You love talking to the kids and being mentors.
Absolutely.
And things like that. Are you still involved with
Yeah, absolutely. I do the radio program for their football broadcasts on iHeartRadio Extra Sports 690. So I do the pre and the post game show for the football games. That's awesome. That gives me an opportunity to really get to know the players and the coaches on a different level, and then to make sure that when we're being represented on the radio, we're being represented by somebody who actually cares deeply about the program, no matter the score. So great opportunity to also give back. I host a lot of events for them, and do a lot of charity work. So between San Diego and Mira Mesa, those are the two places that I spend most of my charitable time.
Right. So this year, have you been following Aztec football so far? And
yep.
So what can we expect out of the team this year? What looks good? What are you concerned about?
Yeah. So last year there were a very young team up front, offensively, with a very experienced running back, Rashad Penny.
Yeah.
Right. He himself was also inexperienced. He had never been a starter before, but it was only because he was behind some guys that were there before him, right? So I knew that Rashad could and would have a big year if this very young but talented offensive line could play well. And they did, and he did, all the way to the first round, to the Seattle Seahawks.
Right.
Well, now it's different, right? Now they have a running back, Juwan Washington, who is also a very good running back, has a ton of experience, a great kick returner, just hasn't had a chance to be the guy. The only difference is that young offensive line that they had last year is now the strength of their team. They're a big, physical, talented, now experienced offensive line. So I think it could be some really cool things that continues to happen offensively in the run game for San Diego State this year.
So Washington, you expect him to kind of pick up where Penny left off then with this experienced line?
I do. Different type of player, just like Rashad is a different player than Donnell Pumphrey, right?
Right.
But the system that Coach Horton runs is exactly the same. It's built on toughness. It's built on running the football. And now that they have an experienced offensive line, I think Juwan is a different type of running back than Rashad. But I think that he will produce similar results based on the fact that that line is now a lot better.
So you expect some wins from this team this year?
I do. I think that the age of football has evolved, and it's evolving back, right? Where it used to always be run the ball, stop the run, and then it turned into this kind of shred them and spread them thing. But now teams are realizing that in order to win championships at a high level and consistently, you got to run the ball and stop. You got to run the ball and stop the run. So what San Diego State has is they have a system that works, and because they've been winning so much over the last 4 or 5 years, they're continue to get the players to plug into that system.
Speaking of players, Dave Justice, a friend of mine, his son J.R. Justice is. He's going on as a freshman now. I saw a video of him moving into his dorm. I remember that day. He didn't look too happy. Just kidding. But if you were to give, now he's going in as a receiver, so if you were to give this young man some advice, what would it be? Because you were in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say first and foremost, understand that you got to take care of your body. You know, it doesn't, when you're young, it doesn't really catch up with you, right? Eating crap or staying up late or doing the things that young people like to do, it doesn't catch up with you until you're in your 4th or your 5th year, right? So what I would suggest for him, because athletically he's gifted. You know, he comes from great genes. He's a big body. He has a great football IQ. I think he's going to be a phenomenal asset to that program. But I would say learn how to take care of your body. Learn how much you need to sleep, how much you need to eat, understand how what you put into your body changes the way you perform, and do that early, and it'll benefit you down the road.
Do you think Rocky Long will give him an opportunity to compete for some snaps
Absolutely.
during the season?
Absolutely. Okay. Rocky's the type of guy that he wants to put the best receiver, the best player on the field. Now, he's going to make you earn it. You know, he doesn't give anything to anybody, especially a true freshman. But if you come in and you show that you're tough and you're disciplined and you're smart and on top of that you make plays, he'll give you an opportunity to be everything you want to be.
Right, right. So we look forward to a pretty good season this year.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think it will be.
Excellent. So you mentioned that you still get involved with San Diego State. You do some broadcasting for them, but I know the broadcasting's not going to pay the bills because you're married and you got kids.
3 of them.
So what does JR Jr. do now, career-wise?
Yeah, I own a State Farm agency in Mira Mesa. It's been a great way for me to connect and be a resource back to the community. And like you said, I got a family of my own, so it's weird. I've been able to use my personal life and my business life together always, right? As a professional athlete, being a football player is a part of your whole life. You don't go to work and then come home and you're no longer, it's one of those professions where you're always a football player, so your personal and your business are together. The State Farm insurance opportunity has given me the same opportunity,
right,
where I've been able to bring my personal, my passions, my dedications to the community, being able to bring it together with the business, purvey that through my office, and just continue to be a resource.
So you do auto, home, and business insurance?
Yep, auto, home, business, life. I look at it as if you have an insurance question, call me.
Yeah.
If I can help you, I will. If I can't, you're going to get information from me that you can take somewhere else, so that the problem with insurance, people don't understand what they're buying.
Right.
And so my goal is, first and foremost, I want you to understand what you're about to buy, whether you buy it from me or you buy it down the street. Make sure you know what you're asking for.
Yeah, I've been with State Farm for, since 1981. And my first car and so forth, and I love State Farm. I notice I probably pay a little bit more than some of these other insurance companies, but being in the trenches, I deal with insurance companies, as you know, doing personal injury a lot, but paying that little extra, because when you are in the battle, if God forbid you cause an accident, hurt somebody, or vice versa. My experience with State Farm personally, because I have them, and also being in the trenches and being up against them, very good company. It's worth, if you can afford it, it's worth paying that little extra to have them on your side. Great. There's other good ones, but State Farm, in my estimation, is one of the best, and that's why I've been with them for all this time, and so forth. And I know we talked a little bit about this, and if I could just chime in on one other thing,
course.
And I think I wrote a blog perhaps several years ago, but again, being in the trenches, doing personal injury, it is so important, especially in auto accident cases. We know that the state of California requires you to show proof of insurance to get your license,
Right.
and get registration, and you're supposed to have at least a $15,000 minimum policy. But what we find out is that people go out and get a policy, they pay the first or second month, and then it lapses.
Right.
And then the DMV doesn't know what's going on half the time. And about, I would estimate, and I think I read some sort of a statistic, about 25% or 30% of the people driving out there don't have insurance.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage is very important, and obviously you know what that is.
Right.
And so my recommendation to anybody, when you get a policy, it doesn't have to be with State Farm,
Any policy.
talk to your agent about those limits. In other words, you can get a $15,000 limit, or you can get a $250,000 or even a $500,000.
Right.
Get the highest you can afford, because that protects you or anyone in your car if you have a catastrophic, or even you break a leg and that far exceeds $15,000. But anyway, my point is uninsured motorist, also known as underinsured motorist, is money well spent.
Yeah, I agree. And, we say it's the most important line item on the policy. As a consumer, we think about the deductible, right? We talk about car insurance, we think about crashes, we think about, how much am I going to have to pay if I get into an accident to get my car fixed, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really as a consumer, an uneducated consumer not knowing, that's really where most people go, the deductible or the rental car coverage. But let's be honest, insurance is for devastation, not aggravation, right?
Right.
So understanding how to configure your insurance in a way that if there is devastation, you're going to be you're going to be covered as good as you can possibly be. The company, like you said, doesn't matter, right? If you have whatever company you have, just make sure that the coverage is exactly what you need it to be based on your personal financial situation.
Yeah, and one other point about uninsured. I mean, if you have, let's say you have a 50,000 uninsured motorist limit, to go from 50 to 100 is probably a few dollars a month, and people don't realize
Right.
that. So again, talk to your agent. Say, look, I've got, do I have it? And if I do, what's the highest I could be offered, and how much is it? You'll find that it's money well spent. I just real quick, I have I'm representing somebody in a terrible motorcycle accident, and at the end of the day, he had no uninsured motorist coverage, unfortunately, and the driver that caused the accident had a small policy. If he would have had something meaningful, he would have got his loss of earnings. He would have got all his medical taken care of, and his pain and suffering. But unfortunately, that's a situation where he did not, and he has it now, but too late.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
So anyway, I just wanted to catch up with you. Great guy. I respect everything you've done in life. I really like the fact that you really want to give back to these young kids and just help them understand what life is about, after football, during football, and so forth. But great seeing you, as always.
Yeah, appreciate the time.
All right.